All right, everybody, welcome back to Military Surplus Brothers. We're back at you with another surplus rifle video for you today. We have, of course, come out into the great heat of South Carolina. It's hotter than Satan's backside today in late June 2016. We are going to shoot a little bit for you, do some military surplus shooting. Our friends, the water bottles and milk jugs, have made another appearance today. Of course, those are, well, 2 liters, but milk jugs will make an appearance later. Just as a side note before we begin, we do make sure that we pick up all of our trash. I mean, I know that's probably not really evident in a lot of our other videos, but we are good stewards of the Second Amendment and of our range, which is a private range. There's a lot of freedom going on out here, a lot of shooting, which you can probably hear during this video. But with that, let's do some shooting. Alright, let's talk about the design elements. So, this is, again, as we said at the beginning of the video, the French MAS-36. MAS being manufactured d'armes de Saint-Étienne in France. This is a major arms manufacturer there. It's kind of their state arsenal. This one was re-arsenaled in the 1970s and then sold on the surplus market in the United States. Obviously, it's here with us in South Carolina. A couple of interesting design elements about this gun. One, it is a slab-sided receiver with 2-piece stock. This stock obviously doesn't extend under. That's your magazine well there. It's, you know, standard sort of leaf spring situation there. It is a 5-round internal box magazine that obviously can be removed. It has front notch sight with a hood for adverse conditions for light. The rear sight, on the other hand, is a leaf with various distance demarcations. Now, if you did want to change the sighting picture for this gun, it's kind of unique. It is not windage adjustable at any point. What you would actually do is go to the arsenal and say, hey, my gun shoots left, or my gun shoots right, or it shoots high or low, and you'd say, I need a new sight leaf. So there's like 30 different sight leaves that you can get from the arsenal, and since we live in the United States and Saint-Étienne is not doing that anymore, you now have to order them and install them yourself. You can't really do it anymore. So that's kind of a unique sighting thing. Now, this gun does borrow a lot of aspects from a lot of different bolt actions of the World War I era. They borrowed the rear locking lugs from the SMLE. They got the folded down bolt handle of some of a lot of other nations' bolt actions in the 1920s and the period after the First World War. Most First World War guns were straight bolt handle. All right, the swept bolt handle is actually a holdover from the P14 and P17, which was kind of a combined effort of the Americans and the British during the First World War. The idea being that when you close the bolt, your hand is automatically near the trigger, which is supposed to result in a quicker follow-up shot and just a general increase in speed of operation. Now, it is a little awkward for most American shooters, but having attempted to fire this gun very quickly, it does quite well, actually. The couple of other elements that are interesting in this, we do have no safety on this firearm, which is actually very typical of French firearms of that period. You were intended to load your 5 rounds, push them down, and then drop the bolt over, and until such time as you needed firepower, you would leave that empty because, again, no safety. Now, the bayonet on this rifle is very interesting, actually. It's something that the Germans would take cues from, actually, on their Fallschirmjägergewehr, the FG-42. It is a spike bayonet, very similar to the Rosalie bayonet, which you'll see on the Lebel and also the Berthier carbines. They both use the same ones. They do not use this one. Now, as you saw, it is stored under the barrel in kind of a tube there. It is a 17-inch bayonet, which is rather substantial. To put that back on, you just need to turn it around and place it in there by pressing this plunger, which releases and locks it into place. And then it is very solid, or at least solid enough to go through a few German enemies, I suppose. When you want to unmount bayonets, you simply press the plunger and reinsert into the tube there for storage. Okay, there's 5 rounds. Let's see if we can accomplish something down here. At our nasty German milk jugs down there, let's see. That must turn out good. There we go. and in the middle. I missed that one. Yep. You got to miss one or two on the video. I think that last one still got a lot of water in him. Let's see. Yep, it did. There we go. Cool. Very accurate. Very good. I like it. Now, I will posit to you, historically, that if the French had got a lot more of these in production, they might have been able to hold the Germans off a lot longer. Now, whether or not they succeeded is all historical guesswork, but very, very accurate, very functional firearm with a lot of potential. Having to fight the Germans, who had a lot of very fantastic K98s going into the Second World War, with Lebels and Berthiers, and a few of these really probably wasn't the best thing. And then you have to also remember that it takes 2 months at that time in history for a country to really gear up for war. So we can't really blame the French. They weren't ready. So it happens. Now, the MAS-36 is also interesting in the sense that it is the last major bolt action fielded by a Western nation. The Madsen bolt action is probably the last major design to be released to general military service. However, that doesn't really count because no major nation was using it in large quantities. This is the last major design of a major military force in the world, really. The French used this in World War II. Again, they started production in 1937, so a few years before the Second World War really started. They unfortunately, though, did not produce nearly enough of these to support all of their troops. In fact, by the end of production in the early 1950s, they'd only managed to produce something like 1.1 million MAS-36s. As a result of this, by the time 1939 runs around, there's not enough of these to supply all French troops, so many French troops end up getting the older, more elderly Lebels and Berthier carbines in rear echelon service. Now, these did generally see frontline service, but as we're all probably aware, the French didn't really last very long in the Second World War, which is kind of sad for them. Alright, so let's talk about the cartridge used by the MAS-36. Now, the MAS-36 was introduced with basically a new cartridge for bolt actions anyway. Actually, the French, some of their machine guns used this before the MAS-36, and they just decided to adapt it into a bolt action rifle. Now, on the table you can see a 7.5 French and another 7.5 French. In fact, you would have maybe thought that those were 308 NATO or 7.62 by 51 NATO for that matter. These are very similar ballistically, so you'd be forgiven for thinking that they look the same. And honestly, quite frankly, they're very similarly sized, only a couple millimeters difference. During the time that this gun was being fielded and manufactured, France realized that the full house military loads like 8mm Lebel and 303 British were maybe not necessary for most combat environments. In fact, they found in World War I that while combat was happening anywhere between 50 yards and 500, the full house military loads they had for that were probably not tremendously necessary for most combat. Most combat in World War I, even between the trenches, was under 150 yards. And they didn't move tremendously much. And a lot of in-trench fighting, you don't need something that'll go 5 miles. You do need something like this, which produces a somewhat lighter recoil and is more than powerful enough to deal with the threat of another soldier. As I said, this is a 5-round internal box magazine, so let's get all 5 rounds in there and shoot us a group on paper. See how this thing is as far as accuracy. Okay. Some carrying protection there. This is rather a short rifle, so it does produce somewhat of an impressive concussive force and sound. So, all right, top target, here we go. Recoil's very manageable, though. I like it. Very pleasant shooting gun, actually. One thing that is a little odd about it is it's got sort of a short length of pull, so it feels kind of like a child's rifle in a way. Alright, let's go down range and see how we did there. Alright, so, you know, that's a pretty good group there. It's a fist-sized group at, you know, probably 40 yards. We're not probably further than that. That's good, decent combat accuracy, especially offhand, and knowing that I'm not the best shot in the world, it's pretty decent. Now, we did do a shot group earlier where it was a little slower. This is how good this rifle can shoot, and actually 2 of those are from earlier when we shot some milk jugs, but the first initial group is these 3 here. So it is you know, a well-built rifle. It is very combat effective for distances at which you're likely to fight in, say, the Second World War. Now, this rifle, obviously, for this kind of group, is very effective for combat distances in World War II, but it did also serve in the First Indochina War and a couple of other conflicts like the Suez Crisis a little later on. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the First Indochina War, that is actually the kind of the French occupational war with the Vietnamese in Southeast Asia that basically just initially precedes the American involvement there in what we now call the Vietnam War. Alright, we're going to shoot a little bit of somewhat longer range. We didn't get to use the 100-yard range today because it's unfortunately occupied by a lot of people, and since videos don't work well around 10 people on a 100-yard range, we're out at 50, so you're just going to have to deal with a slightly shorter range. Here we go. Alright, so again, MAS-36. Got a couple of evil milk jugs down range. Let me see, I'm going to load up 5, and hopefully I won't need all of those. But go ahead and see what we can hit here, if I can get my rounds to load in. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it is notable that they do make stripper clips for these, but we don't have any French stripper clips, so we'll just have to do without that. That was reasonably common technology, but not a lot of those are available here. So, there we go. Alright, let's see what we can do. I'm going to take B1 on the right here. Oop, missed him. That's surprising. This gun's been very accurate all day. Let's see if we can do that again. One here. Well, I got him. Wasn't a real good shot. We'll go to his friend in the middle here. Just to the right. Okay, well, hold off to the left then. Here we go. That's why I would have been taking this to the arsenal and getting a different one of these leaves here, I guess. There we go. That's kind of useful knowing where it shoots, huh? Alright, and we'll get the last one on the left here. There we go. We'll take one more round to get that one on the right. I don't think I got him real solidly, so might as well take him out. Here we go. Got him. Alright. Okay, I've only got 2 more jugs down here, but, you know, I'll load 5 because I'm an optimist. So, there goes something that I shot earlier, I think, falling down over there. Alright, here we go. Let's see if I can take these out. I can't imagine the French doing a lot of prone shooting, but maybe they did. Here we go. Well, good thing I loaded more than 2. Try that again. Try again here. There goes one. Take out the really skinny one. This ought to be a trip. Hey, better than I imagined. Alright, well, let me get up here. Ladies and gentlemen, that there, MAS-36 from World War II. If you don't have one of these, they are available on the surplus market still. Not a lot of them just floating around, but you can find them on Gunbroker and other auction sites, somewhere in the range to $450 to $500, and they're all kind of in good condition. So They didn't see a lot of heavy use. They were used, but most of them have been Arsenal refurbished. So if you don't got one of these and you want to shoot something similar to 308 and have to load for it, get one of these. All right, Military Surplus Brothers out. If you guys like this kind of thing, see the end of the video, and you'll get some more video. Y'all have a good one. Bye.
Des yeux qui font baisser les miens, un rire qui s'appelle sur sa bouche, voilà le portrait sans retouche de l'homme auquel j'appartiens. Quand il me prend dans ses